Brandon, hey man, thanks for coming. Appreciate it.
Hey, look, man, you got a second?
Yeah.
You know, I've been in and out of church all my life, and these last few days, God's really been working on me, really been moving me, and I just want to ask a favor. Would you mind baptizing me?
Welcome to The Crossing. We're so glad you guys are here with us today. I just want to throw out a special shout out to Warren and Bob Santel, Warren Barnes, and the others that have been starring in our little mini movie. I mean, as I said, these guys, Chris Pratt, Tom Hanks has nothing on these guys. So yeah. Matter of fact, I actually heard that Bob's acting is so riveting that people have actually been going up and offering him financial help because he lost his job. And people have not talked to Doug Ginn ever since they laid him off. So it's been really good. We're going to tell the rest of the story and finish it up next week. Also, I just want to say, if you've been with us for the last month, you know we've been in the middle of this FOR campaign, and there's the staff and just a lot of you have been very busy with small groups. We've been talking about it through small groups and just different aspects, from the chili cook-off, the big party up on the hill, which was awesome, and just everything. But one of our hidden gems that we have at this church on our staff is Brandon Kelly, who was up here, who just led in the announcements and prayer. I don't know if you've been following, but he did a 28-day devotional journey, and it's something that you could actually still go on to. But Brandon writes that stuff. He's very creative. He's a very gifted writer. As a matter of fact, he has a book right now that is in the end stages of being published. So we have an author amongst us. So anyway, we're really blessed at the church, and I just wanted to give Brandon a big shout out because he's an incredible communicator, writer, and blogger and all that. And I don't know where he's at, but kudos to Brandon for that. Anyway, also, if you are visiting with us today for the very first time, please come back. Because what I'm about to talk about is family stuff. For those of you who've been coming for a long time, you know how we are. We're very authentic. We're very transparent. Sometimes we just talk about it and we kind of get in each other's grill. But if you're visiting with us for the first time, you're probably going to not maybe like the topic. I'm not really trying to apologize, but I'm foreshadowing, okay, what's coming. So you got to come back another week to give us a shot. But anyway, today we are basically collecting what we've called our Commitment Sunday. And we're going to be collecting our commitments at the end of the service. Now, here's what's going to happen. We're going to collect them today. We're going to collect them in the mail. If you want, you can mail them to P.O. Box 95. Again, that's P.O. Box 95 at Batavia, Ohio, 45103. But we're not going to give the announcements of the total committed amount until Sunday, November 6th. That's 2 Sundays from today. On Sunday, November 6th, we're going to give the total amount because there have been a lot of people that said they couldn't be here today, so they were mailing it in, and we want to give the total after people have had a chance over the next 2 weeks to collect it. So you'll have to come back on November 6th to hear the big announcement of what this church family has committed over the next 3 years. Next week is what we're calling a First Fruit Sunday. And what that means is if you've been praying about this and you have a number in mind, but you have some funds that have been set aside just for this, next week we're encouraging everybody to bring that lead offering, those first fruits, and we're going to collect a special offering to kind of jumpstart this campaign. So next week is the first fruits offering, and it's going to be a different kind of service. You're definitely not going to want to miss this because it's going to be an incredible service of celebration and worship, and it's going to be phenomenal. So you're going to want to be here for that. Now, first fruits. What in the world is first fruits? You hear this term a lot in the Old Testament. And basically, Proverbs 3, 9 through 10, verses 9 and 10 says this: honor the Lord with your wealth and with the first fruits of all your produce. Then your barns will be filled with plenty, and your vats will be bursting with wine. So basically, what is a first fruits offering? Well, by giving God your first fruits, it was Israel acknowledging that all good things come from God. And everything that we have belongs to God. And so by giving the first fruits, it was a way of expressing our thanks and also expressing our trust that He will still provide. So what would happen is they would get their crops, and as some of their crops would come in, they would give the very best, and they would give it to the Lord. They would dedicate it to the Lord as if to say, thank you for providing this, and we're giving you our best, our first fruits, and then we're going to trust that you're going to be faithful, and continue to provide. So it was an act of appreciation for God's generosity, and it's also an incredible act of faith. So that's where the term first fruits comes from. So next week, what we're asking this church body to do is to bring a jump start or a first fruits to put in the plate, and then trust that God is going to continue to bless us individually and corporately as a church. Now, I know for many of you who've already jumped ahead in the schedule that the Cincinnati Bengals are scheduled to play at 9:30 a.m. a week from today. I know that. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Set your DVR. Turn off your notifications. Turn off your phones. Come here and worship. And then go home and be disappointed. Okay? Put your disappointment off. Come and worship God first. Set your DVRs. That's why we have them, unless somebody's hacked them in the last couple days. But set your DVRs. Bring yourself, bring your first fruits, and bring an attitude of worship, because we are going to rock this house. So be here next week. Now, we started 4 weeks ago talking about we being a church that is for. We've said all along we want to be known more for what we are for than what we're against. We've said all along that from the very beginning we wanted to be a church that was for this community, not at odds with this community. We wanted to be a benefit to this community, not a liability. And we've talked all through this series that God is for. I mean, John 3:16, for God so loved. So we know God is for us. He is for you. So the very first session we had is God is for you. Regardless of how messed up you are, regardless of how screwed up you are, regardless of what you're in the midst of right now, what you've come out of, or what you're getting ready to fall into, God is for you. You. Personalize that. I know it's hard to wrap our minds around, but He is for you. And this church is a church that is a gathering of messed up people. We've said that from the get-go. We are a church for messed up people, led by messed up people, just trying to introduce you to the one who cleans up the mess. So God is for you. The other thing we talked about is being a church that is for others, because God is for others. He's not just for me, He is for others. And so we as a church need to be for others. And then last week we talked about being for action. God took the greatest, most significant action in all of human history when He gave His Son on my behalf and on your behalf. He took action to save us from our sin. And so if we are going to be Christ followers, we also need to be people of action. We need to get busy. Well, today I'm going to wrap it up by talking about God is for us. And by that I mean, I really believe He is for us as a church family. I believe that from the very beginning stages of planning and talking and praying about this in living rooms of people's houses, that God has been blessing us. He has given us so many opportunities to do some things that are just unimaginable for a church that's only 5 years old. Unimaginable. And so I'm a big believer that while God is for His church, kingdom-wide, universal, He has obviously been blessing this body that you're a part of. God is for us. And so before I get into the message, I kind of wanted to share kind of our story, the story of us being told by people who have attended this church over the last 5 years. So watch this video.
The theme we kind of chose for this campaign is for ... the ellipsis there. We did that because, as I said, our heart from the very beginning is we wanted to be known more for what we're for than what we're against, and that we wanted to be for the community and not a liability. We also know that God is for us. You know, one of the most famous passages of Scripture that everybody knows, if you're even watching a football game, is John 3:16, for God so loved. And so we want to be for our community. We want to be a church that is for acting like God, loving like God, serving like God.
I think there's a lot of need in general in our community. I really didn't realize how much actually until I came to the Crossing, but through programs like the backpack program that they do at the schools and taking food and just meals to these people all around these towns, that's huge. I didn't realize that that need was there, and I think that now I realize that need is there, and probably even more that we can do to reach out to the people who are in need.
I would describe the church to one of my friends as some place you can feel safe. It showed me how to be a volunteer and how to be a better person.
And so for about 5 years I was out of the ministry, I was working in the court system as a bailiff for Claremont County Municipal Court. Had no intentions of ever doing ministry ever again. I was fine with just attending church, serving in a church. But unbeknownst to me, God was really working on me. And my wife and a lot of other people kept saying, I think God still has a plan. So I think during that time in the court system, it really opened my eyes to the hurt and the hopelessness and the struggle that's out there. And so my passion that was building within me was not that there aren't some great churches in this area, but it's pretty obvious about 8 out of 10 people aren't going anywhere anymore. And so God was really working on me to create a place that would be a safe place for everybody.
It is just an all-around church that takes care of people. And that is one thing that you look for as a member. You want to be in God's family. And I feel that we are here at the Crossing. It's hard times for a lot of people. As far as the challenges go, everyday life, you really and truly don't know what it's going to be from one day to the other. Whether it's lack of jobs, whether it's sickness, it's just everyday living, and that's what we have to do. We have to help with everyday living. We have to be servants. That's what Christ told us to do, and that's what we need to do.
Well, I think that the greatest challenge in the community right now are drugs. I think that there is an epidemic of drugs, and I think that's probably the greatest challenge that is faced by people in this area and maybe all over the country. I do know that the philosophy of the church is that you bring in messed up people. You welcome messed up people into the church, and because we're all messed up. So I know that the idea that these people, no matter what the problem is, would be welcome.
I own a business in the community. I employ about 300 people. And I deal with drugs like on a daily basis. I see the workforce that's locally in this community, and I see their struggles, and it's such an overwhelming force. It's changed the way everything is dealt with today. Drugs to me are drugs, and all, drugs is the root of the problem. The theft and all the things, the family problems, and all those issues that the drugs are the root of. I just can't believe how this has spiraled, and I think a godly force is really the only way you're going to defeat something like that.
We get this call saying, I don't know if you'd be interested, but we're looking to sell our campus, to sell our building. And it came so out of left field that it could only be from God. We've always said that we wanted to be the kind of church that would draw people here. I like to use the analogy of the old Little House on the Prairie days. And I know whenever you bring up the Little House on the Prairies, you want to start crying. Because, you got to cry at the end of every one of the episodes. But if you remember in those days, there was a building that was in the middle of the town. And it's where they had their school, it's where they had their town meetings, and it's also where they had church. And we've always wanted to be that kind of place. We did not want to build a building to be a church that would make people uncomfortable. We wanted to build a community center. And so when they called, they said it's 54 acres on top of a hill across from a community college. It's a community college, but it's the University of Cincinnati, Claremont. It's also next to the airport. It's also next to one of the largest housing projects in Claremont County. It was like 54 acres, 3 buildings, and we're like, wow, that's so like God, because He's placing in a place where young adults, students who are maybe trying to get a second lease on life, going back to school, are coming to college here. The airport's here, so there's a lot of development going on there. There's people that are living in a complex across the street that are down on their luck. And so God places us in a place where, while it may not be in the very center of the community, it is in a place in the community where it puts us in the center of a lot of great ministry opportunities.
The dream is pretty much what's going on right now. It opens its arms to everyone. It shows love. It is there to help. We want to help people, not only with spiritual, but whatever they need.
Yeah, one of the unique things about our church, at least I don't know, I think it's atypical, is we've always been a church that's wanted to embrace irresponsible generosity. I heard someone say that once before, and I thought, yeah, that's us. I mean, if we're going to err to the side of one way or the other, I'd rather be considered irresponsibly generous rather than be someone that hoards. I don't want to bury the talents God has given us. I want to just invest them and that He's entrusted us with. My dream for this church has been that this would be a place that is a true representative of the real Jesus, not the one that has somewhat been manufactured and even taken hostage and has been hijacked by certain agendas. But I want this church to be a community center. I want this church to, no matter what you believe, where you stand, where you're at, that you would feel welcome walking in the doors. My heart is, it's time for the church, and by that I mean not the Kingdom Universal Church, but I'm talking about the church that I'm a part of, the Crossing, church known as the Crossing. It's time that this church becomes a true benefit and asset to the community that it's in the heart of. I want people to see this place as being a place that they're going to be welcomed and that they're going to be loved and they're going to be helped. And I want them to see this place and say, if that's what Jesus is, then I want Him. I want to be Him.
So I believe that God is for us in the sense that He has given us an incredible opportunity and many more opportunities potentially to come. He has set the table for us. But the question I have that's been running through my mind is, while God is for us, are we going to answer the challenge? Will we be a church that demonstrates, not through our words, but through our actions, that we're for Him? That we are worthy of the blessing and that He has entrusted us with in the way that we respond. Now, whenever you do a campaign like this, whenever you do a fundraising campaign, and as this campaign has been going on, and in the days, weeks, and months even to come, if we ever talk about it, there is no doubt that there are some people that will only focus on the money. That's all they're going to hear. That's all they're going to think about. That's what they're going to be. Their focus is going to be on the money. Some of us will focus strictly on the building, on the facilities. And while both are necessary, God has made a way for us to have this building, and it wasn't free. We do have to pay for it. While both are necessary, that should not be our focus. Our focus should not be on the money. Our focus should not be on the building. Our focus should be on the gift and opportunity that God has given us. Our focus needs to be on the opportunities that we now will have because we have more land or more opportunities to grow, to build. Our focus needs to be on the lives that will be changed because of Christ. Our focus needs to be on the mission to love and lead this community to Jesus. That's where our focus needs to be. The finances, the facilities, while they may be necessary, are only tools. They are only tools. They cannot be our focal point. Loving God, loving people, and loving this community is what has always mattered and what needs to always matter, most of all, at this church. So where is our focus? Where is your focus? As we've been talking about this campaign, what has your focus been on? Has it been on the building? Has it been on the money? Or has it been on the opportunity? Is your focus on the ask, because we've been asking, or is it on the opportunity? Because we've been given a great opportunity. Is your focus on the change in your pockets or the opportunity to change lives? Is it on the building or is it on the life building that can take place? Look, I get it. Whenever we are asked to pursue the will of God, it is extremely uncomfortable. It is. You can read in the Old Testament all the way through the New Testament. There were many times God provided an opportunity, but the people had to take a step of faith to claim it. And those who did would say it was a blessing, and they were glad they did. Those who didn't walked away sad, disappointed, regretful. So I get it. I understand. I have skin in this game as well. So whenever we start talking about these things, I understand that when God is challenging us like this, that it is uncomfortable. But I believe that when we join in God where He's moving, we will not regret it. We will only regret it if we don't. For God so loved the world that most importantly to you and to me, as far as our salvation is concerned, He gave us His only Son. But I also believe right now, His mission, His plan in the New Testament, the book of Acts, was to carry out that message, to carry out that good news through the local church. And so we have an opportunity to not only accept that gift that God gave for us, for me, but it is obvious that God is for us and that He is blessing us because He gave us this opportunity. He gave it to us. So the question is, how are we going to respond? You know, this is Commitment Day. This is. And again, if you're visiting with us, I apologize. But we're glad you came. But if you're a part of this family, this is Commitment Day. And in my own little carnal mind, or whatever you want to call it, as the lead pastor of this church, as the shepherd of this flock, at least one of them, I just feel like it's a measuring stick to how far we've come or where we are when it comes to our trust in God and what He's entrusted us with. I just believe it is. I believe He's given us an incredible opportunity. So as Brandon said, we asked you to hang on to the commitment cards. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about those commitment cards because I think I've done a really bad job in beforehand explaining about how these commitment cards work and all that. So I'm going to try to do that now, and I apologize for not doing this more in advance. But regarding the commitment card, here's some things that I want you to know about that card. These cards are private. The only one that knows what you're going to write on that card is God and Hudson. And don't get those two mixed up because they are not the same. The only person in this church that's going to know what you wrote on that card is Hudson and God. No one else knows unless you go up and say, hey, look what I'm giving. This is what I'm committing. No one else knows. Which I will say is also true every time you give here. The only person that knows what you give is the person who is maybe counting and recording it, so that those of you who tend to take advantage at the end of the year for your charitable tax donation, your charitable donation, it has to be recorded somehow. Somebody has to see it. And so in this church, who sees it is whoever it is that is taking it and recording it so they can send you a check so you can then send it and file it with your taxes, for those of us who rightfully take that move. But somebody knows. Somebody has to know. In this case, when you turn this commitment card in, the only person that knows is you and God and Hudson. Again, don't get them mixed up. We are asking you to put your name on this card. And let me give you a couple reasons why. Because one church had a card come in that had no name on it, and on that card, there was a commitment of $500,000. This church thought, wow, that is spectacular, but I wonder if it's real or not. And so they had to do a lot of investigating and a lot of checking, and finally they found out that it was not real. The person accidentally added an extra zero. It was meant to be $50,000. That's a huge difference, folks. That's $450,000 that they thought they were going to have, but after a little investigation realized they weren't going to have. There's another reason that it's important for you to put your name on the card. It's because in another situation, a church, and we'll use the name John Smith, pledged $1 million. Fortunately, in this case, John Smith did write his name on the card, and everyone knew that John Smith was an overly exuberant 8-year-old, still gainfully unemployed and majoring in transformers at the local elementary school. Because we might have some exuberant kid says, yeah, I'm gonna do it all. I'm gonna put the $2 million down there, and again, their heart's right, but unless they got a killer lemonade stand, I don't know. So that is one of the reasons we want you to put your name on the card. Let me tell you some other reasons that we don't want you to put the name on the card. The names are not going on there so we can compare who gave a little and who gave a lot or who didn't give it all. That is not why your name is going on the card. It is not so we can compare. The names are also not on there because this is going to be a legal binding contract. This is not a legal binding contract. This is just, let's call it a faith promise pledge. That if God provides and if things go well, and this is what we hope to give. But it is not like a car payment. If you don't come through with what you wrote on the card, Hudson and his henchmen and angels aren't going to be pounding on the door saying, where is it? You said this, but you haven't done it. That's not why we want the name on the card. So I don't want you to go there. This is faith promise, not a legal binding pledge. We realize that in this church, the bottom drops out. And you may have this great expectation to hopefully give this, and all of a sudden the world falls apart on you. If that's the case, we don't expect you to keep your commitment. We understand. The flip side of that is, maybe you commit something and you find out that you have a long-lost relative that you didn't know about that has kicked the bucket and left you millions and millions of dollars. If that's the case, we're also not going to hold you to what you put on this card because you may want to give more. So understand this. This is not a legal binding contract. This is a commitment that you and God are making in faith. In faith. So understand that. God gave us this incredible, incredible gift, but we have to kind of know where this church family as a corporate body stands on this. We borrowed $2.5 million to buy the building because when it was set out there and given it to us, we had to respond. But we got to kind of know where this church body is on this. Because let me give you a present day example. Let's say your employer said, you got a big, huge bonus coming at the end of the year. And I mean, it is huge. We're talking like 6-figure huge. And you go out and take a dream trip, buy the dream car, and buy a dream house. And then the employer says, you know what, change my mind. Not going to happen. Anybody seen Christmas Vacation? All right. We just are trying to get a gauge. So we could be good stewards in projecting our 2017 budget, our 2018 budget, and our 2019 budget. And so that is the reason we really need to have an idea of who's in and to what extent are we hoping to be in. That's why. And the reason when we announced this, I mean, everybody was for it, everybody was excited about it, and everybody said, this is a no-brainer, go, 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 go. Well, now's the time to pay for it. And so that's why we're doing it. And we're asking for these commitments again so we can measure it and move forward. Now, let me just say to you, if you're here today and you still don't know what you want to write on that card and God's not made it clear to you what it is you need to write on the card, here's what you can write on the card. I'm still praying about it, and we're praying for this church because we covet that. We value prayer. So if you don't want to put a number there because it's just not been clear to you yet, then just put your name on there and say, we're praying about it, and we're praying for this church because we value that. We value that. Now, I just need to say, and I know this is a very difficult word for us to wrap our mind around in 2016 America, but we're asking you to trust us. See how hard that was? We're asking you to trust this leadership. We're asking you to trust that we are going to follow God. And I want to say about this leadership, we are the same leaders today that we were last year before this opportunity presented itself. We are not consumed with money. We haven't all of a sudden transformed into a group that's chasing and worshiping the almighty dollar. The only reason we're talking about this now is because right now is the time we have to act. That's the only reason. Now, let me say something else about trusting leadership. I know that because we are a church filled with messed up people, that there are some people here who have come from toxic church situations where you were burned by the leadership of the church you came from. I understand that, I get that. But do not hang that burden around this leadership until we've earned that reputation. Don't carry in the baggage from some other bad experience and lop it in with us. Unless we've earned that reputation, then let us have it. Let us have it. We are asking everyone to join us. We're asking everyone to join us. And here's why. Because you heard it said, and we say it time and time again, we are a church that wants to be irresponsibly generous. We are a church that wants to respond to the needs of our people, the needs of the community, and the needs in this world. And we want to continue to be that kind of church. I mentioned this a few weeks ago, and maybe for some of you this was a surprise, but since 2013, in just the last 3 years, this church has given away about $270,000 to people in this church who have had needs, emergencies, to people in this community, and to people around the world. This is a 5-year-old church that gave $270,000 away. Many of you out there would say that's irresponsibly generous. And we want to continue to have that DNA. We want to continue to operate that way. And I believe that the only way that's going to be possible is if that everyone goes in on this. Everyone. And it is not the size of the amount that counts. It's that the amount that you give, every amount counts. Every amount counts. The building, the financial campaign, it has not changed who we are. But we all have to participate in this in order to maintain the level of irresponsible generosity we've been operating under. And we need everyone. Everyone. And let me just say it to terms again that you'd understand. How many of you have a rent payment, mortgage payment, car payment, or a student loan payment? How much more generous could you be to your community, to your family, and to your church if you didn't have that? That's why we want to pay this off. Because we want to continue to take care of the needs. Because here's the thing. We may have a nice building, but the problems aren't going away, folks. The issues in our community and our families are not going away. They're going to keep coming at us. And we have to be ready to respond. And so that is the challenge that faces us. But I'm asking you to trust us as leaders to do the right thing. And speaking of trusting your leadership, this leadership is not asking you to do anything that they aren't willing to do themselves. As a matter of fact, we had an event last night where we asked the leaders and some of these are community group leaders, small group leaders, elders, staff, and others that are leaders and others. We asked them to come and to make a 3-year commitment, and then we tabulated that 3-year commitment and it added it up. And so I want you to know what your leadership has already done and committed to this goal. Show the number. That is more than twice of the 2 other campaigns we've had up until now. And if the rest of us get on the train, we will pay this off. This will happen. So I'm asking you to trust this leadership because they have not changed. They still love you. They still love this church. They love serving, and they are not afraid to lead by example when it comes to making sacrifices. Let me just tell you a little bit about the leadership here at the Crossing. They are not enamored with the title. They don't want the authority. Being a leader at the Crossing just means this, simply lead servant. We're going to lead in serving. Follow us as we follow him. And he was the greatest of servants. And so that's the kind of leadership you have here. Here's another thing that you can take to the bank. Having this building is not going to change us. This building is not, and I say not, going to become our idol. We are not going to worship it. We will own it. It will not own us. It is only a tool to provide ministry. We also don't need that building to somehow validate that we have now arrived. Now that we got a building, it's proof positive that we are a church. That is the worst attitude, and that is a slap in the face to all the servants who for the last 5.5 years have been sacrificing and laying the groundwork to where we could even be in position to even take the hill and go get that building. There has been a church here for the last 5.5 years. You know why? Because the church is the people, not the building. So we will not worship that building. Spill all the coffee on the carpet you want. Well, no, don't do that. But that building is not our idol. It is not our God. It is a gift from God so that we can use it as a tool to continue to equip the saints and reach the lost. That's all it is. And you can trust us on that. The reason this church has been here is because they love God and they love people. Guess what? Sticks and bricks and steeples don't love God and love people. The people do. That's you. That's me. So I'm asking you to trust us. Now, if you've just started here or you just stumbled in here today for the first time to check us out, I realize that's a huge leap. And I don't expect you to trust me just because I'm standing up there saying it. We're going to have to earn it if you come back. But for those of us who have been here from day one or been here long enough to know, do not let the fog of all of a sudden this financial talk cloud your vision as to who we are as a church. You know that this church is not all about the money, and that's not all we talk about is the money. As a matter of fact, I went back and looked, and of the 250 to 300 sermons I have preached here over the last 5.5 years, I could only find about 10, maybe 12, where I even addressed giving or being good stewards or finances. 10 to 12 out of 250 to 300. So you cannot say that we are a church that's all about your money and all we want is your money. Here's what you can say. I need to repent, because if we're going to be a church that follows Christ, that does the things that he talks about, Jesus talked about money more than he talked about anything else. Read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Make a mark. You'll see it. The reason Jesus talked about money more than anything else is because Jesus wanted to cut through the crap and get right to the heart. Because when you talk about money, you are now getting into other people's gods and idols. And you all of a sudden really know who is the master of this life. That's why talking about money bothers us. And that's why Jesus talked about it so much, because Jesus is like, I don't want to hear what you got to say. I want to get to the heart of the matter. And I can find out real quick where my gods are, where the idols are in my life when I look at the pocketbook. And I can find out where my idols are when I look at where I spend the most of my downtime. And Jesus knew that. So I repent that we don't talk about it more. But we do not talk it because we need your money, we want your money. We talk about it because it is a heart issue. And right now we know God is for us. The question is, are we for him? Do we trust him? And so do not let the fog of all this financial talk all of a sudden cloud your vision as to, well, all they want is my money. All they want is in our pocketbooks, because that's never been the case. And if you've been around here long enough, shame on you if you all of a sudden believe that. Because you know that's not the truth. You're just bothered by it because now you're having to make a decision. And so what's it going to be? Every time there's been a discussion about money here, I will say this: it has ticked people off, it has made people squirrely, it's made people uncomfortable, and some people have even left. Do you think, just for a second, since we're a family, isn't it interesting that one of the leading causes of divorce and marital conflict is money? Huh. And so it's no surprise that one of the greatest conflicts in the church is, let's talk about money. I'm asking you to trust this leadership, because I can assure you this leadership has not changed. We aren't all of a sudden wanting to get into your pocketbook or your business. We simply want this. We do not want anybody to miss out on the blessing that God has laid on the table for us. I don't want anybody to miss this train. You have an opportunity to move where God is moving, and he chose to move right now during this time while you just happen to be lingering around here. So I would take that personally, that God has chosen to do this while you're here. And so you have an opportunity to join him. We do not want something from you. Man, we want something for you. We want you to experience the greatest blessing that all of us get when we go all in with God and trust him with all of our heart, mind, soul, and strength. We don't want you to see this as a challenge. We want you to see this as an opportunity. This is a chance for you to respond to God's generosity in your life and in this church. This is a time for you to grow up and to build maturity in your faith. This is a time for you and I to demonstrate our trust in God. And honestly, this is a time where I'm having to learn how to trust all of us. Because I don't have a problem with God. God has proven himself faithful time and time and time and time again. What worries me is I don't trust us and how we're going to respond to that faithfulness. That's where I lose my sleep. And we all, and I mean all, because it is not the amount that counts, it's the heart. It's the heart. You know, in the book of Acts, in the New Testament church, in chapter 2, towards the very end, around 42, it said they all gathered together and they gave everything they had. They all pulled it together and they shared everything they had. You know what came from that? An explosion. Church exploded. Here's something I can tell you pretty much with a lot of clarity. That somehow, since the New Testament church, there's come a time where many, many churches are filled with people where really 20% of the people give 80% of the funds. That has become what the church family operates like. We have a chance to be different. We have a chance to be atypical. We have a chance to resemble the most pure New Testament church there ever was. And the only thing that will cost is for every single one of us to join in this at some level. Any level. And if 100% of us do that, then we will take this hill. But it needs all of us. Whether it's a dime, a dollar, a quarter, $10,000, $100,000, what I want is when we celebrate and party and we rip up the mortgage and all that stuff, I want every single one of us to be dancing in the aisle, high-fiving, because we all played a part in this. I don't want anybody sitting back on the sideline and faking it. So I want you to join us. And I don't know what that level is, but I know this. Just go in. That's all I'm asking. The time is now. The time is now where we can, for once and all, put our money where our mouth is and say that we are a church unlike any other. And I believe that's why God has entrusted us with this blessing. Now I want to make sure that He can continue to trust us in our response. So the question is loud and clear again. Man, God is for us. Are you and I, are we, the Crossing, going to be for Him? Are we going to be for Him? He is the cornerstone. It is in Him we place our trust, nothing else. He is the head of this church. He is why we exist in this church. He gave His life for us. Certainly, we can squeeze out a little bit of our way of life for Him. Certainly. We can give up a little bit of our way of life for the one who gave us entirely all of His. And so what's it going to be? Hey, you know what? Maybe you don't want to trust us. I'm challenging you to trust Him. Trust Him. That's where I want to be. I want to be in His wake. I want to be following Him. And so I'm inviting you to follow me as I follow Him. I'm inviting you to follow this leadership as we follow Him. And if you want to be where God is moving, you have an opportunity to do that right here, right now, at this local congregation. And so the way I want to close this out is I want us to stand and I want us to sing. I want us to remind ourselves who is the cornerstone. And then we're going to finish with a time of communion. So don't slip off because we want to invite you to have a time of communion. But we're going to sing first and then I'll wrap it up on the back end.
You guys stand and sing this with us. Is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly trust in Jesus' name. My hope is built built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly trust in Jesus' name. Christ alone, cornerstone, the weak made strong in the Savior's love through the storm. He is Lord, Lord of all. When darkness seems to hide His face, I rest on His unchanging grace. In every high and stormy gale, my anchor holds. shall come with trumpet sound. Oh, may I then in him be found, dressed in his righteousness alone, faultless stand before the throne. We sing this out. In Christ alone, in Christ alone, cornerstone, the weak made strong in the Savior's love.
Through the storm, He is Lord, Lord. For God so loved the world that He gave His only Son, that whoever believes in Him should not perish but have eternal life. Verse 17, though, you don't see this on the poster boards. For God did not send His Son into the world to condemn the world, but in order that the world might be saved through Him. There is no greater way to remember how God loves us and how God is for us than celebrating around the communion table. If you're with us every week, you know normally we say pass the basket, take the little cup, take off the layers and all that stuff. We wanted to finish up this morning with action. We wanted to give you an opportunity to invite you to come forward to the stations. There's 2 here, there's 2 on the side and 1 in the back. To come to the table that Jesus, when He instituted in Luke 22, verses 19 through 20, basically said, when He took the bread, He said, this is my body. This represents my body that is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me. When you take this bread, remember that body that was striped by whips on His back. And by those stripes we were healed. That body that was beaten for you and me. When we take that bread, that is what we remember. Is that incredible, incredible sacrifice. And then later He took the cup and said, this represents my blood, the new covenant. No longer covered by slaughtering a lamb. I am that lamb. I am the new covenant. I am the new way. It is through me. It is through my blood. It is my blood that covers the multitude of all of yours and my sins. And so when we come forward here, and we're going to ask you as you leave today, to come forward and to reflect upon the greatest sacrifice ever given in all of human history. But we also want you to bring something, to bring a gift, to bring a little sacrifice in comparison. When you do, you can put your gift in the basket and you can thank God for Jesus, and then you can head home. Now, for those of you who are not in a position to take communion, you're not a believer in Christ, you're still trying to check all this out, you don't have to do this. You can just quietly go whenever you feel led, and there will be places on the back. If you want to drop the card in there as well, you can do that on your way out. But this is an opportunity for us to take action, for us to get up and to come forward and to reflect upon the greatest sacrifice ever made in all of human history. And it's also a chance for us not to just bring our measly sinful selves as we do every week, but it's a chance for us to bring a gift. A gift. And I get it. It's going to be a sacrificial one. And so just come when you're ready. And again, come back next week, bring your lead gift, bring your first fruits. We're going to party. We are going to celebrate what God has done. So you're not going to miss next week. But at this time, when you're ready, just come forward or go to the station and thank Him